I remember the day we arrived, not long after the last blizzard died down. The air outside was so cold it burned your lungs, even through the scarf I had wrapped tight around my face. America was a frozen wasteland, or at least our corner of it in what used to be, well, it doesn't matter now. Names don't matter. Only the cold did. We'd driven through ghost towns, past ice-covered wrecks of cars, just us in our beat-up old truck for what felt like months. Sarah, Lily, and me. We were just looking for somewhere warm, somewhere to survive. When we first saw the villa, it was like a mirage, a fortress of glass and steel, glinting under a pale, wintry sun. Steam plumed from vents, proof of the geothermal system they'd boasted about in the old, faded listing. Absolute safety, the brochure had promised, absolute warmth. I remember gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white, a flicker of something close to hope in my chest. Sarah, beside me, let out a shaky breath. Lily, huddled in the back, her face pressed against the window, actually offered a small smile. A real one. God, I had almost forgotten what that looked like. We unloaded the truck, our lives, packed into a few worn bags. The air inside the villa was humid, a comforting blanket after the biting chill outside. Almost too warm, really. You could smell the ozone, the slight metallic tang characteristic of any place running on heavy machinery. But it was warm. That was all that mattered then. We checked the rooms, one after another, each one more opulent than anything we'd seen in years. Lily even found a working television, though there was no signal, of course. "This is it, kids," I told them, trying to sound cheerful, trying to believe it myself. Sarah walked around, touching the polished surfaces, running her hand over the sleek, modern furniture. She opened the fridge in the huge, gleaming kitchen. It hummed softly, full of the fresh food that had been stocked for us, a luxury almost forgotten. Lily, for her part, immediately disappeared into her new room, plugging in her ancient phone, already lost in the silent world of her downloaded music. Just a normal teenager in a very abnormal world. I went to the main control panel, checking the thermostat. Everything seemed to be running perfectly. The geothermal system, humming deep below us, was doing its job. It started small, practically nothing. I was in the basement, a vast, echoing space below the main living area, mostly concrete and exposed plates, where the heart of the geothermal system throbbed. I wanted to make sure everything was in working order. You know, the main guy, keeping us safe. That's what I tried to be. I was checking a particularly large ventilation shaft, pressing my ear against the cool metal, listening to the rush of air. That's when I heard it. A faint thrumming, deep under the concrete floor. Not part of the vents. Deeper. It sounded like a slow, rhythmic gulp deep in the earth. Like something vast and slumbering was taking a breath. I straightened up, wiping a hand across my forehead. Just the old compressor, I muttered to myself. Too much rumbling from these old systems. Had to be. It was a bit loud, though. Louder than I expected. And then I noticed it. A new hairline fracture, thin as a spider web, running across one of the concrete support walls. It hadn't been there when I did a quick check the day before. I just stared at it for a moment. Foundations settle, right? Especially with all the temperature changes these days. Probably just the house groaning under the shift in the earth. I pushed the thought away. No big deal.
Upstairs, Sarah was trying to scrub what she insisted was a faint, musty smell from the pristine white bathtub in our ensuite. She kept scrubbing. The tub looked spotless, gleaming really. But she kept sniffing the air around the drain, her brow furrowed. "Do you smell that, Ethan?" she'd called out earlier. "Like wet earth or old leaves." I hadn't noticed anything. I told her it was probably just the pipes. Now I heard her sigh. No, I remember her sigh. Then a small, exasperated huff. "Mice," she muttered, I think, "must have found their way into the plumbing." I didn't see any mice, and I figured I would have smelled them. But I said nothing. Better to let her believe it was a simple explanation. And Lily, the ever-present screen addict.
She was lying on her bed, headphones on, humming along to something, scrolling through old pictures on her phone. Suddenly, her screen flickered, a faint shiver across the display, then it just dimmed, turning almost black for a split second before snapping back to life. She looked at it, then shook her head, a small, frustrated sound escaping her lips. "Ugh, the Wi-Fi here's just terrible," she called out, though I knew what she meant was the simulation we'd loaded, the few offline games and videos. There was no Wi-Fi here. Not anymore. Seriously, it's like the end of the world or something. A joke, a bitter little joke. I made a mental note of the crack, decided to deal with it later. Sarah eventually gave up on the bathtub. Lily went back to her music. We were all trying to normalize, trying to pretend. Later that day, I got a bucket of plaster and some old paint from the utility room. I tried to patch the crack in the basement wall. It wasn't hard to do, really, just a quick fix. Didn't need to alarm Sarah or Lily about a little crack, not yet. I smoothed the plaster, then painted over it, trying to match the concrete. It looked fine, no big deal. Sarah, a few hours later, was trying to make coffee, a luxury we were all savoring. Her coffee maker, an old, reliable model we'd hauled all this way, started making this stuttering click-click-click sound. It flickered erratically, the digital clock flashing madly, even though she'd plugged it in repeatedly, making sure the connection was snug. She swore under her breath, a rare thing for Sarah. "Damn it," she muttered. She unplugged it abruptly, the brief burst of white light from the plug startling her, and tossed the cord onto the counter. Probably too much electricity for these old components, or too little. She just poured us all instant coffee instead. A distinct smell wafted from the bathroom attached to Lily's room. A harsh, almost metallic odor. Sulfur. It reminded me of those hot springs back home, before all this. Lily sprayed her cheap perfume, a heavy, sickly scent that just mixed with the sulfur, making it worse. "It smells like rotten eggs, Daddy," she whined. I shook my head. "Probably just some weird plumbing thing, babe. Give it a minute, it'll clear." She mumbled something about her perfume being better than nothing. We didn't connect these things. Not really. I mean, why would we? It was a new house, an old system, a dying world. Things break. Things smell. We just wanted to be warm. The blizzard hit that night, hard. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the heavy glass panes, thicker than anything I'd ever seen. It sounded like the world was tearing itself apart. We'd gotten so used to the quiet of the wasteland, the soft crunch of snow. This storm was different. It felt personal. By morning, the villa was a white tomb. Every window was a sheet of swirling white. No distinguishing between sky and ground. Just white. Absolute. And with it, our last thread to the outside world snapped. The satellite phone went dead.
The internet signal, which had been barely clinging on, vanished. We were completely cut off. Trapped. That's when the events really started to bleed into our fragile reality. Lily was usually glued to her music, headphones often her only escape. One afternoon, I walked past her room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear this soft, melodic tune, faint, like it was coming from inside her headphones. A familiar pop song. She was humming along, her eyes closed. Then she pulled the headphones off, tossing them on the bed. The music stopped, but the melody, it hung in the air. I heard it, clear as day, that same tune, faintly, vibrating somewhere in the room, not in my head. Lily sat bolt upright, her eyes wide. She looked around, then pressed her head to her temples. "Wow," she mumbled, "that was a really strong echo. I guess my brain's just playing tricks on me." She laughed, a little too loud, a little too forced. I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, my gut twisting. It wasn't an echo of her brain. I heard it too. But I just nodded, tried not to make it a big deal. "Yeah, probably, kiddo. Happens when you listen to too much of that stuff." God, I hated lying. Later, Sarah was making tea in the kitchen. She always loved her tea, a little ritual of normalcy. She leaned against the large granite islet, running her hand across the cool, smooth surface. She paused.
I saw her hand tense. "Oh, that's cold," she said, almost to herself. Then her eyes widened. She slid her hand just 6 inches to her left. Her fingers flew back. She looked at me, her face pale. "Ethan, that bit of the counter, it's scorching, like someone just put a hot pan straight onto it." I quickly walked over, placed my own hand where she'd pointed. It was unnaturally hot. Not just warm from the house's general warmth, but burning. I pulled my hand back, shaking it. It felt singed. "The floor heating system," I said, trying to remember what little I knew about geothermal. "It must be faulty, a localized short or something. Yeah, that has to be it." She looked at me, then at the counter, her eyes full of doubt. We both knew how unlikely that was for a brand new, supposedly top-tier system. But what else could it be? Nightfall came, and with it, the cold seeped into our bones, even inside the warm house. I was trying to sleep, trying to shut out the howl of the wind, the creaks and groans of the house that now seemed to multiply. I buried my head in my pillow, trying to find some peace. And then it started. A low, deep humming. Right there, under my pillow. It wasn't the house, it was deeper. A sound that vibrated through the mattress, through my very skull. Like the heavy, labored breath of something utterly massive, buried alive. I clamped my eyes shut. I tried to focus on my own breathing, trying to make it my own heartbeat. "Just tinnitus," I whispered to myself, my voice scratchy. "Just stress. You're tired, Ethan, that's all." But I knew it wasn't. The next evening, we were all trying to act normal. Dinner. We sat around the large dining table, the soft glow of the ornate chandelier above us. We were drinking water, boiled, of course, because we were cautious, practical. Lily took a sip, then made a face. She pushed her glass away. "Ugh, Daddy," she said, crinkling her nose. "The water tastes so weird, like someone dropped a handful of pennies into it." I looked at Sarah, who was already frowning, her own glass halfway to her lips. She took a tentative sip. Her eyes widened. She slowly set the glass down. "She's right," Sarah said, her voice quiet. "It's metallic, really strong." I picked up my own glass, sniffed it. Nothing, just plain water. I took a gulp. And yeah, Lily was right.
It was a nasty, coppery tang, leaving a foul aftertaste. A strange, uneasy feeling settled over us. We looked at each other, our eyes silently asking the same question. I stood up, walked to the kitchen tap. I filled a fresh glass. I sniffed it, tasted it. It was clear, refreshing, no metallic taste at all. "Are you sure, you two?" I asked, my voice laced with my own confusion. "It tastes fine to me now." I brought the glass back to the table, offered it to Sarah. She took a hesitant sip. Her eyes went wide again, but this time with a different surprise. It's gone," she whispered. "It's back to normal." Lily stared at her own glass, which, now that I looked closely, did seem to have a faint yellowish tint. But mine was perfectly clear. She dumped her glass in the sink almost aggressively, and then refilled it from the tap. Clear, perfect. She looked at us, her young face etched with frustration and a hint of something else. Fear. I tasted it," she insisted. "I swear I did." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to find an explanation. Any explanation. "Old pipes?" I mumbled, though the villa was practically new. "Or maybe you're just tired, sweetheart." She didn't say anything. She just picked at her food, her eyes fixed on nothing. No one ate much after that. After the water incident, a creeping unease started to fester. It wasn't just physical things now. It was in our heads. We all felt it. Lily started having the worst of it, the nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, her sheets tangled around her, her eyes wide and wet. They were so vivid, she could barely tell what was real and what wasn't. One night, I heard her struggling, gasping for air. I went to her room. She was sitting up, trembling. "The house," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It was crying. The pipes, Daddy, they were twisting, wriggling like veins. And there was a voice, whispering. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew what it meant. It wanted everything." I tried to calm her, told her it was just a bad dream, the stress of everything. She just clung to me, her small body shaking.